Hello, everyone. Today we'll be discussing water transportation in the United States. This will cover freight and passenger services, including the Great Lakes, Staten Island, and more.
Nice. And this is a topic you came up with. So what was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, I have a pretty big ongoing photo project documenting the Erie Canal right-of-way in Buffalo, New York, and I hope to contribute some images to it this summer, and I need to have some writing for it when it's done, and I kind of see this as like the precursor to that, fleshing out all my thoughts.
Yeah. We'll link, that photo series in the show notes so people can look at it. When do you think the project's going to be complete? Like, what would it take for you to consider it to be done?
I kind of started it because it was the 200-year anniversary of the Erie Canal opening, and now we're the next year past that. And I started it 2 years ago, so hopefully within the next year or so that kind of stays around the time of 200 years.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I looked through it, so not to get ahead of ourselves, but a lot of the pictures aren't of water.
Yeah.
So is it because the Erie Canal and the portion of it that was in Buffalo, it got paved over or something?
Yeah, so a lot of even Buffalonians don't even realize that. Like, they just think of the Erie Canal because it's why the city exists, but it's actually the Niagara Expressway. At least within city limits, you can follow that path, and you basically follow the Erie Canal right into the center of Buffalo.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I was doing research for this week's episode, and I was trying to zoom in on like Buffalo to figure out, okay, where is the Erie Canal in the city? And I couldn't identify it. So that makes sense now. Yeah. Also, this is the first Patreon exclusive episode. So we're going to be back to doing it where every third episode is private. Please support us on Patreon. We put a lot of work into what we do. And the best way to help us is financially like that. Or, you could give us a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, that kind of thing.
Or like tell your friends.
Oh, yeah. Share an episode with them that you like.
Yeah.
So to start out, before we really get into a deep dive on the Erie Canal, I just want to address what canals are, just because they're not a natural feature. They're always man-made. So any canal you've ever heard of, that is or was an infrastructure project that was meant to connect waterways or expand the land that was available for shipping.
Canals and shipping were the primary mode of transportation in the U.S. For roughly 7 decades, from 1790 to 1855. This is also known as the American Canal Age.
Yeah, it sounds brief in retrospect because to us now, it's like, oh, that was only 70 years.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about that period of time, that's a lot of the nation's history that ships were the primary means of transportation. And, doing research for this week's episode, I realized that there are far more analogs between shipping and railways and then the interstate highway system that I never realized existed before.
Right. And, it kind of is an important time for when the Erie Canal was built, if we're going to talk about the Erie Canal, because that was opened in 1825. And if you can tell, it's kind of towards the end of that. And, it's hard to...
More in the middle of the canal
It's
age.
in the middle, but, 30 years isn't that long of a time in terms of technology, especially when you're approaching like the Industrial Revolution. So, the Erie Canal was an incredible feat of engineering, but it was made obsolete only a few decades later with, freight rail and then obviously highways.
But it had a really big impact on the region just in that period of time. Like the Erie Canal, it spurred what I've thought of now as like canal-oriented development, where basically, because it's a linear path, it spurred the same sort of linear development that you see with railways and with highway infrastructure, where basically all of the big cities and a lot of the smaller ones in upstate New York, they were just tiny hamlets or villages prior to the construction of the Erie Canal. And then its completion turned them into cities with hundreds of thousands of people, like Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse.
Yeah. I mean, I always think about it, maybe because I'm like a nerd about these types of things, but Buffalo was just a village when the Erie Canal opened, and it was chosen as the terminus of the Erie Canal. And Black Rock, a neighborhood just in the north of Buffalo, was kind of the competitor to be the terminus. And now it's just a neighborhood in Buffalo. No one thinks about that. And it really was its own rival village to Buffalo. And when the Erie Canal opened, that's when Buffalo became a city instead of just a town. It was, turned into a city.
I mean, there's so many examples like that. Like